The reliance on China for rare earths, which power everything from smartphones to fighter jets, is forcing governments to rethink their supply chains. India is pushing new partnerships from Myanmar to Australia. The US is trying to rebuild capacity at home, and Europe is investing in cleaner alternatives. Australia and Africa are also emerging as key players, but which of these efforts can realistically challenge China's dominance, and how quickly? Well, for The View from India, we have Swasti Rao, Associate Professor at OP Jindal Global University and Consulting Editor of The Print. And Sophia Kalantzakos joins us from New York. She's a professor at the New York University, Abu Dhabi. All right, Swasti, India is the only developing nation in the US-led Mineral Security Partnership. It joined in 2023. Can you explain the aim of this forum and how India is leveraging it to solidify its supply chains?
Well, so the first thing is that, right now, India's imports of rare earths and magnets are not as much, of course, as you compare with any advanced economy. But the point of concern here in India is that this has been growing. And especially on the magnets itself, I mean, the dependence that we have on China is humongous. So obviously, there is a strategic risk here because right now, our consumption is modest, but the growing demand is across sectors. It is on clean energy, EV, electronics, you name it, right? So this is why India has been joining, all these partners. Now, when it comes to the United States, of course, India is there with the United States on rare earth. India is there with the United States on semiconductors. But the proof of the pudding has to lie in eating Divya, and this is where the buck stops. Because right now, we are facing a turbulent phase of our bilateral relationship with the United States because of Donald Trump's style of politics, which is extremely personal and extremely unique to how to his worldview and how he looks at America's place in the larger scheme of geopolitics. Now, having said that, I have been of the view, and I have argued through my writings, through different interventions I've made, that India and the United States have a long-term convergence, and rare earth and diversifying the production and the supply lines chains of rare earth is obviously intrinsic to that. Similarly, the same logic applies to semiconductors. Agreements between India and the US. But like I said, that as long as we do not see a sizable investment coming into India from the United States, as long as there is no blueprint to take this forward, it basically becomes a nice little document to look at. And so far, I have not seen any real development. The only, I would say, the encouraging bit out there is that even though Donald Trump's turbulence is right now going on, I mean, there is again some sort of a rapprochement. Donald Trump happened to wish our Prime Minister a happy birthday today. So all that is also happening, But we have not seen any real cancellation of sorts, right? So there is nothing that has been cancelled on paper. There are no plans which are sabotaged. There is nothing which is really off track. And that itself is a huge development. Now, having said that, I can tell you that India has a larger strategy actually to secure critical minerals. And this is not just about, the US. Like I told you, that with the Quad countries also we have something. And similarly, what we have at the center of our, strategy to secure our critical minerals supply chains, etc., is this venture called KABIL. And this venture, KABIL, is a joint venture formed in 2019. And what they've done is that in January 2024, KABIL for the first time has signed a $24 million worth of agreement. I mean, this is an exploration deal in Argentina. And like I said, that this is what has marked India's first direct investment in Latin America's lithium triangle. Now, those are the things that we require to see with the United States, not just being signed on paper, but something where you see the flow of funds from one side to the other in a manner which is timely and like I said, that something that can also give us results. Again, the larger point is that there are great steps that have been taken, and I'm sure the viewers here would also know that the rare earths are also intrinsically linked to all the semiconductor, discussion as well. So on both these parts, we have had some very landmark developments with the US, but we have to really take that forward. And a lot depends on how India and the United States are able to manage the bilateral relationship during Trump administration, because long-term convergence is there, but we don't want to miss the time we are missing, because like I said, that if you see today, the dependence is modest, but as India is growing, as our GDP is growing, the dependence on China is also growing, and magnets are at the heart of this, dependence.
So, Sophia, as we talk about the U.S. administration's vacillating foreign policy, how much is it driving? And given, as we're saying, as Swasti just said, magnets are at the heart of now many of these relations. What is happening in the U.S. space, particularly given that we're seeing how it's engaging with different countries? And as you had mentioned before, China is presenting itself as a stable or as a part of stability.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, domestically, the United States has returned to a notion of industrial policy, something that they had completely left to the side in the years where globalization was really the one ideology, this kind of uninterrupted access supply chains that crisscrossed the planet. This was the idea that would give the most efficient economic production of final manufactured goods. And the United States and other industrial nations really relied on this completely globalized chain. And through these globalized chains, we also had innovation and we did have competitive pricing. However, now, because these transitions are the only, how would I put it, the only game in town, it had declared that it wanted to excel in the next digital transformation. These have been very clear plans that have been on the table for quite some time now. The West, for instance, and other countries in Asia and the industrial world overall had chosen to perhaps ignore these plans because they thought that China was also super far behind. Now, the United States today is subsidizing. It's even taking an interest, a government stake in companies, like it's done with MP Materials, which has been now underwritten by the Department of Defense in order to produce magnets and in order to be able to process the rare earths that it produces at home. MP Materials has really taken this opportunity, given the political situation, I think. It has positioned itself as the only U.S. alternative. It has light rare earths, not the kinds of heavy rare earths that the world really needs, but there has been a lot of funding, underwriting, and even price security for magnets in the event that China decides to flood the market in order to wipe out competition. So these are some of the things that the United States is doing.
I want to bring it to the situation we're facing here in Taiwan and Taiwan's semiconductor industry, which is critical for its economy and its security, relies heavily on China for its both rare earth processing and it's a source of rare earths. So, Swasti, is there any opportunity for Taiwan to look to India to be replacing some of what China does in the supply chain of rare earths?
It's a win-win strategy, Divya. We've been actually waiting for Taiwan to invest in India when it comes to semiconductors, when it comes to rare earth. I mean, so far, we keep talking about how Taiwan and India have this huge potential which has not been realized properly. And I think at the heart of this is the tech collaboration and cooperation on these issues, which, like I mentioned, semiconductors and rare earths. Now, when it comes to semiconductors, of course, the TSMC has an office in Bangalore, but so far TSMC has steered clear of making any direct investments. Recently, I argued that India and Japan happened to have very recently a very ambitious agreement on semiconductors and investment in India by Japan. And I argued that this could also pave the way for making Japan as a kind of a pathway, a kind of a bridge for getting also Taiwanese investments into India finally. Similarly for rare earth. So, India already has, like I mentioned, in my earlier remarks, I mentioned about Latin America and how KABIL is having this first investment there in Argentina and what is the way in which they're doing it. Similarly, India has had similar, plans with the Quad countries. Of course, Australia is a resource reserve state. India can become a manufacturing hub because India has huge reserves. US is the leading technology leader, and Japan is the major investor and capital provider. So similarly, I think the situation is pretty obvious for everybody to see. The thing to remember, is Divya, that all this sounds very good on paper. The real problem that India is facing right now, and just before this, I think Sophia also mentioned about de-risking from China, etc. The real problem is that what we saw while there was a global push for de-risking from China, the China plus one diversification that is often referred to, India has not really been able to make use of that China plus one diversification because the investments that were not going to China didn't really land in India. So you have like one story of success somewhere, but you don't really have that as a pattern. And what has happened is that most of those investments actually went to Singapore and Vietnam and countries like that, not really coming to India. Now, as a result, what has happened is that in the last few decades, especially in the last one decade, because that is when the India story has been celebrated and told over and over again, you see that manufacturing as a percentage of our GDP has been falling. And right now we stand at about 13%, okay, which is quite worrisome because, like I said, that the more we start exporting to the West, the more we become dependent on China because the more we start importing from China. So we have to basically here in India break this particular cycle of dependency. And the only way to do that is to really get investments which are timely. And that is why I mentioned countries like Japan, countries like Taiwan, countries like the US. Having frameworks is one thing, it's just half the part done. But getting investments and de-risk investments at a time when there's so much uncertainty, all over the world is also something which is a challenge. And India has to do a lot of internal reforms, domestic reforms in terms of making India's, investment ecosystem friendly to foreign investors. Those are things that are where the real work lies. Okay, it is less to do with having a mission or a great snapshot out there, because of course India is the natural choice for so many countries that are looking for building more resilience in these supply chains and production chains. The question is that does India have the capability and the capacity to do it? And for that, we need to take some very fundamental steps, and that is our real challenge.
Sophia, we're just about running out of time here, but bringing it back to Taiwan and beyond India, Taiwan's chip industry is critical to the global defense supply chain. So what kind of moves are we seeing from other countries to ensure, or are there any kinds of moves that Taiwan keeps getting its supply chain is secure and it can de-risk from China?
I think the effort has been to attract investment from Taiwan into other jurisdictions. I don't know if the moves have been to secure the supply chain of critical minerals for Taiwan. Some of the latest investments are investments in creating a foundry in the United States, for instance. This is nothing to do with, for me, it doesn't seem like those two things are correlated. Now, I do believe that there is, I think that Taiwan itself has made many moves in order to diversify and de-risk the supply chains. I mean, there is a very special geography and history, and there are geopolitical difficulties there. But I do believe that Taiwan itself has taken many steps, not only to look toward recycling, to the circular economy, but developing these kinds of relationships with its partners in order to be able to diversify. Build resilience. I mean, I think that perhaps the mistake is that the mantra out there is to destroy or bring down or reduce significantly China's dominance. I think that is probably not possible in the near future, neither in the medium term, I don't think. But I definitely think that it is very worth considering the entire globe is moving in a particular direction, considering the fact that we have agreed on the green transition, although the United States is a little bit of an outlier now, but the rest of the world is going to proceed with the green transition and the digital transition. The reality is we are going to need to have alternate supply chains, create new partnerships in order to be able to secure the base and continue to trade with our partners. China, too, is not going to look to shut countries off. China wants to be part of the global economy. The fact that it may use economic statecraft in order to settle a geopolitical dispute, well, who isn't today? Before, perhaps, China may have seemed as if it became super assertive in 2010, but today it is about geoeconomics. And frankly, in the end, let's even look at the tariffs. It seems that somehow the United States and China are making strides in figuring out how they're going to tax each other, whereas the rest of the world is still in sort of a guessing game and in limbo. So, I think we should perhaps reframe, secure the base, open up, build new partnerships. That was a long time coming. It is really great that friends of old, or perhaps countries with which we did not share similar outlooks, are now talking to each other, because in the end, we're all in this together.
We're all in this together. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you both so much.